Bernie Sanders is the beloved uncle you never had in Chuck Rocha's new book that shows you how you can change the world. Check it out, leave your comments, ding the bell, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. Very curious story here being reported by the Washington Post. I'll just share this with you very quickly, and then I want to get to our guest. The Washington Post is reporting that General John Hyten, he's the number 2 guy in the Joint Chiefs. He's the vice chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the military's second most highly ranked officer, was extensively quizzed by Slovenian citizen Melania Trump. She has dual citizenship, both Slovenian and U.S. citizenship. He says, quote, "I also spent a lot of time talking to Melania Trump about the locations of all of our intercontinental ballistic missile fields. She was more inquisitive and smarter than the president." End quote. Why does Melania Trump want to know where all our ICBMs are located? I'm just scratching my head. Maybe Chuck Rocha can tell me. He's the president and founder of Solidarity Strategies, a former senior advisor to Senator Bernie Sanders, author of the new book, Tio Bernie, which is available for pre-order now and wherever you find your books. SolidarityStrategies.com is the website. Chuck Rocha, R-O-C-H-A, is the Twitter handle. Chuck, it's been a while since we've talked. You used to be a regular on our TV show. It's great to have you back with us. And good luck with the book, Tio Bernie. It sounds fabulous. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Tio Bernie book, by the way, .com is also a website. Tell us about it.
So thank you, and thank you, Tom, for having me, and for all of your listeners and supporters throughout the last 2 years of my life that I've dedicated to working for Bernie Sanders. You know, when the campaign ended, it was weird. We all were sent home. Me and Jeff and Faz and crew was asked to, shut down the campaign in the middle of a pandemic, and I felt lost, and I felt empty, and I felt sad, and I felt mad, and I felt all the emotions that all the wonderful Bernie Sanders supporters felt. And so, I took out a pen, and I thought I wanted to write down how we did what we did inside the campaign and give an inside look for all of the volunteers who weren't in the room, all of the activists who weren't in the room, all of the wonderful teachers and Walmart workers who gave us $5 and $10 to give you a behind-the-scenes glimpse of how me and a team of 206 Latinos built out the most historic Latino outreach operation in the history of American politics. But then also, Tom, like me and you talked about before Bernie Sanders, is I told a lot about my personal story of growing up in East Texas, working in a factory, becoming a union steward at 20 years old, and a lot of mistakes I made along the ways, from having a criminal record to having to raise a baby by myself when I was young, to kind of give a roadmap to a young brown or black woman or man out there who may make mistakes in their life or never been to college like me, that this is possible for us, and you can work for progressives, and you can have progressive values and work in politics without giving up everything that's just about the way that we think.
Yeah, it's solid stuff. We're talking with Chuck Rocha, the president and founder of Solidarity Strategies, former senior advisor to Bernie Sanders, author of the new book, Tio Bernie. What does Tio mean in Spanish, Chuck? Forgive my ignorance.
It means uncle, but it's also a term of endearment. If you go to tioberniebook.com, you'll see that there's lots of blurbs and people talking about Tio Bernie, the Latino outreach operation, or your favorite Mexican redneck, who is me. And Tio is also a term of endearment, like your brother. Like, I have a lot of people who look up to me who call me Tio, and I'm not their uncle, but they look at me like an uncle figure or a father figure. I've been doing campaigns for 31 years, and so a lot of people look up to me. So I wanted to write an open source book so nobody could ever say again that Latinos don't vote.
There you go. So what is the state, Chuck, of the Latino vote in the United States, or generally politically across the country? Where are most Latinos? And by the way, should I be saying Latinx? I mean, what's the appropriate phraseology these days too? But where's the political? How is this shaking out politically?
Well, first of all, your great question about Latino, Latina, Latinx. In Spanish language, Latinx is not a word. And what happens in Latin is if there's a group of Latinos It's spelled with an OS, which is the masculine form of that, right? And that's proper Spanish English.
Right.
And the female feminine form is Latina, is AS. And we give a masculine or feminine to every word in Spanish. And if you refer to a group of people, they always defer to the masculine tone. Well, a lot of folks today don't want to show gender bias, who want to be non-gender conformant, use the word Latinx. I myself use the word Latino, but I also recognize people who like Latinx because I think however you self-identify is very important. And if you do that, I will reflect that on you and show the respect of non-gender and say Latinx. So in the book, a lot we use Latino because I'm an old Mexican from East Texas. I like to use the proper word, which is Latino, with no disrespect, but I also lift up those voices. The Latino vote in America is really, really in a weird state because we have a president who started his campaign attacking us and has never stopped till today, from putting babies and mothers in cages at our borders to doing away with DACA for our dreamers to watching the COVID crisis kill us at 3 times the rate of white people while saying that undocumented Latinos who work in meatpacking plants are necessary manual labor, but not necessary to become U.S. citizens. So with that constant attack, we're in a time of upheaval, but also tremendous nervousness and unrest in the community.
I've been doing these series of books on the hidden histories of America, and the one I just started working on the last month is on healthcare and digging into the history of why the United States has no national healthcare program, all the way back to the late 19th century, but in particular in the 20th century. What I find is time after time after time that when a national healthcare program is brought up, is proposed, whether it was Teddy Roosevelt, whether it was Franklin Roosevelt, whether it was Harry Truman, pick your, it was always opposed by people who didn't want black and Hispanic people to have that benefit. Typically, specifically black people, they didn't want African Americans to have access to health care. Texas, where you're from, still has not expanded Medicaid. To what extent is essentially the war on Medicaid in Texas also a war on the I don't know if disproportionately large, but Texas has a very large population, Hispanic population. To what extent are those two things tied together?
Tom, it's a great question. You hit it right on the head. Healthcare is such a vital part of the day-to-day lives of Latinos, and going back ever since I've been doing campaigns, healthcare has been a core value of why Latinos have gotten involved in public policy because, as you well described, the system has been rigged against us getting fair and equitable healthcare. And I do believe, and I know this for a fact because I've got millions of dollars worth of polling that you don't know about, your listeners don't know about, but I'll tell you today that we talked to with Bernie Sanders. That was one of the centerpieces of why Latinos were drawn to Bernie Sanders was Medicare for all. They saw a fair and equitable way for them to receive health care, and it just so happens prior to COVID, healthcare was the number one reason and the number one economic reason, the number one overall reason that Latinos said they cared and the reason they were going to vote. And because they've been disproportionately underserved in the healthcare market, it was just an issue that I think was a bedrock of why we did so well. And I talk about this extensively in the book at tioberniebook.com about why we targeted Latinos and how we did it state by state by state by running a culturally competent campaign. Now, with a person, most people, an older Jewish man from Vermont who is not the most warm and fuzzy fellow you think of when you think of Latino activists. But because we used a bunch of staff and a bunch of people to take his message to them, then I think that's the reason that he did so well.
There you go. Chuck Rocha. Chuck, it's great talking to you again. Thanks so much for dropping by today.
Yeah.
I do appreciate it. And check out Chuck's book at Tio Bernie, tioberniebook.com. Chuck Rocha, Solidarity Strategies. We'll be